And now here at the IAC conference in Miami, we're with Amanda Berman, the president and founder of Zionists. So first of all, what is Zionists?
The Zionist movement is a new organization. We're just a year and a half old almost, that is activating and empowering Zionists in progressive spaces to stand proudly as Zionists and as social justice warriors for the advancement of social, racial, economic, and gender justice in America.
Because what is the problem that in those areas, what have we seen until now?
Well, there's been a lot of anti-Semitism in those spaces, really for a long time. The irony is that all of these movements were actually founded and led by progressive Jewish Zionists. So we're trying to reclaim that space. We're not existing in order to fight a problem. We're existing because our community needs a place where we can be active with all of ourselves without checking any piece of our identity at the door. But it is helpful, obviously, when you're standing proudly as who you are and talking about how Zionism is inherent to your identity as a Jewish person, and also that Zionism is the original progressive movement and that it remains a progressive value. We're really able to change the conversation happening in those spaces.
And I guess that you're receiving backlash from both sides. The progressives are saying you can't be also Jewish, and the Jews are saying you can't be progressive.
Well, they don't actually come out and say you can't be Jewish because they're smarter than that. So they say you can't be a Zionist and a progressive, which is really, again, it's ridiculous and it's ironic because the founders and the leaders of these movements over time have been proud Zionist Jews. Again, Zionism is inherent to the Jewish identity. It's part of who we are and what our religion means. We pray toward Jerusalem. We say next year in Jerusalem at the holidays. Those of us who are religious say Shema Yisrael 3 times a day. So you can't divorce Israel or Zionism from what it means to be a Jew. And there have been some loud voices in the progressive spaces trying to do that and doing it effectively because the majority of American Jews who believe deeply in Zionism as, the safe and secure Jewish state in the land of Israel really haven't been mobilized in a way that we can all come together and speak with one voice. And so that's what Zionist is doing.
But how do you deal with the other way where people are saying to you, Jews will say to you, that's what happens if you go with the progressive. That's their ideals, to leave the tradition, to leave the old, to leave what was in the past.
Well, I think that people who say that are really missing the boat because the vast majority of American Jews identify as liberals and progressives. There was just a poll a couple of weeks ago that Mark Mellman did before the midterm elections, and he found that 84% of American Jews were voting across the line for Democrats. So for those of us within the Jewish community who say you can't, if you care about Israel, you can't vote for the Democrats, they're forgetting 84% of our community. So strategically, it makes no sense to abandon all of our people. It makes no sense to abandon the party where we all feel ideologically aligned, or the values of the liberal movement in America. And it doesn't make sense in order to push the polarization of Israel within the American political system. We need support for Israel on both sides.
And just recently, Linda Sarsour, we all know as an anti-Israel activist, came out directly against your organization.
So she made a statement because there's been a lot of pushback against her as one of the self-proclaimed leaders of the Women's March. Deborah Messing and Alyssa Milano, 2 big Hollywood stars, said they won't participate unless she steps down and unless the anti-Semitism in these spaces, at least until they call out the anti-Semitism and stop perpetuating it in these spaces. And then the DC Women's March president also made a statement saying that the march was racist and anti-Semitic and that the founders of it were problems and that they were corrupt. And so she's been facing a lot of pressure, and so she put out a statement, and she cited, I think, 3 different instances of people delegitimizing her and showing that she's a bigot in these spaces. And she said that it's undermining her credibility as a leader. And one of the 3 that she cited was a petition that the Zionist movement did last year when she was invited to speak on anti-Semitism on a panel at the New School in New York City. And within a week, we had 22,000 signatures on our petition saying this is not an appropriate conversation. It doesn't make sense to host a conversation on contemporary anti-Semitism with someone who purveys that hate, not someone who wants to fight it. And so we got so many people on board to say this is a problem. This is unacceptable for the New School to host a conversation in this way. We didn't want to shut down speech because we believe in the First Amendment, but we wanted the New School to understand the title of the panel has to be consistent with what's coming out. So she cited that. So she said that what we're doing is essentially exposing her bigotry in the space.
So do you feel now these days in the under the Trump administration that you feel more that you have the push and to say out loud you can be progressive and Zionist? Do you feel it these days especially?
I certainly do. I certainly feel an obligation as a young feminist activist who's always been really committed to progressive issues and values in America. I certainly feel an extra obligation to stand proudly in these spaces and try to advance this, justice and equality and civil rights for all communities. But I also feel that I need to stand proudly with my community. And that's been, I think, a real challenge for people like me, where we're told we have to choose one and we have to make the false choice between being a progressive and a Zionist. So we launched Zionists and said, we're both, and we're not going to check either of those identities at the door.
Relating to the current administration, do you connect to the statement that this has been the best administration for the state of Israel?
It's a complicated one, and I think the conversation has not been as nuanced as it should be. I think that there are certain policies that if any other president had pursued, I would have been really supportive of, but I'm really honestly concerned about the long-term consequences of some of this, of the politicization of the issue, of the conversation being that Trump and Bibi are so connected, and people who don't understand these issues immediately connecting Israel with the Trump administration, I think is going to be a really big challenge for us down the line.
How about the fear that we are hearing a bit in Israel that, okay, it's great today, but the Democrats will want to, not revenge, but they'll want to say, wait a second, we're not like that Republican president.
Yeah, I think that it's for sure there will be people who come into office, whether it's in the White House or in Congress or the Senate, who want to undo everything that Trump has done. And on a lot of that, I would agree. I would also want to undo a lot of what he's done. I would certainly want to just, unequivocally condemn and denounce the rhetoric, certainly just to begin with, that's coming from his administration. But I don't know that people will undo, I don't know that mainstream Democrats would ever undo support for Israel, but I think that the conversation has changed so much on the left in response to what is seen as the politicization of Israel on the right. And it's a challenge. It's making my work and the work of all the people like me who are so committed to, the political left, it makes it much harder for us to explain why Israel is actually a progressive value.
Amanda Berman, thank you very much and good luck.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Great to be with you.